Scion's XB is one of those. Like the Honda Element, you either get it or you scrunch up your face every time you see one. But with the market this car is aimed at, it better have a good tech message. Let's go find out. The XB is not as distinctive as it used to be. Well, that could be said for the entire Scion brand, frankly. But the XB is, I stole it cheap. And it's got a pretty cavernous cargo bay that gets flat and real usable in a hurry. But the cabin is where this car has to speak to its audience. Now, Scions never look like anything else. When you're in one and you don't know you're in one, it's because you're drunk. This is that sort of 4 round gauges Mercury Comet Caliente retro look there. The real star of the show is this head unit, which happens to be the top of the line, the highest upgrade you can get. It's an Alpine branded unit. Notice how it sits in there looking aftermarket. It doesn't even really match the interior, but it is a factory piece. Touchscreen, though it's a small touchscreen, what is that? 4 inches or so? That may be the smallest left in the industry in terms of factory installed. If it was much smaller, you wouldn't be able to utilize these on-screen buttons, but they're just big enough and hittable enough that it's okay. And the touch response is quite good. Now, where the real estate will really kill you or not is in navigation. That's this dedicated button right here. All right, it's tight, I'll tell you that. But I got to give them some credit. I have seen much more expensive units in much more expensive cars that didn't look that well rendered. But boy, that's not a lot of space to get your eyes wrapped around the world outside. And while the touch response is pretty crisp, the rendering and redrawing kind of isn't. This system is not hard drive based, neither for the nav nor for music storage, so nothing that fancy going on here. Again, it's a low cost option, which we'll talk about later, so I'm not knocking off too many points for what features it doesn't have. Destination entry is really straightforward. This is a stripped down, simple interface. Predictive text, as you can see, and it works pretty well. Not a lot of options on this system. You're not going to find a lot of elaborate waypoint settings. You're not going to find live traffic on here. Again, though, cheap option. Your audio input sources are fairly good. Here on FM, you see I've got an HD button right there. So you can turn HD radio on and off. Has HD radio, that in itself puts it ahead of many cars that cost a lot more. AM/FM satellite radio is going to be XM. And this button here for iPod USB talks to the aux jack down here. You can put a USB thumb drive in here, or you can connect your iPod to it via the ubiquitous white cable and get logic control of your iPod right here on the screen. Our USB thumb drive is in there now, and as you can see, the response is a little slow. When I change tracks, it reads out the file name and some other mumbo jumbo, and then it'll resolve things like the tags. Now, you can get this head unit with or without navigation, by the way, and the audio specs are the same. 200 watts of power, 6 speakers, which are door speakers, no subs. Instead, they make it very clear they have RCA outputs to go to subs through your amp. So this car comes from the factory, even with the upgraded head unit, saying, okay, you're going to customize me further, right? Because you bought a Scion, because that's the kind of consumer you are. Audio settings are pretty common on this thing, a whole lot of bass, treble, fader, balance stuff. But then you get to this screen where they have the SSP, Scion Sound Profiles or something. And you can bounce through some feel-good named profiles that are already built for you. Neutral, hear, and feel. Okay. Bottom line is this system doesn't sound real good till you install some bottom end. So buy your new car and then take it home and put in an amp and some subs, because this thing's got no balls without it. And of course, we've got a CD player in this guy. Single slot right there, that's it. Straightforward, no 6-disc changer. A la carte, you can go for Bluetooth hands-free, an inexpensive option on this car. That Bluetooth hands-free system is an oddball. There's a 3-button controller down low on the dash, a mic stuck up in front of the gauges, and no feedback shows up anywhere on the LCD or the instrument panel. You access and use it largely by a series of button presses, holds, and confirmatory beeps. It's a little too much like an iPod Shuffle. Now, aside from looking ridiculous, I wouldn't mind riding in the back of one of these, because you do have the option for a pretty straightforward but functional dual headrest entertainment system. These are basically aftermarket units, again, Scion branded and vended. You've got a slot in each one. You tilt the screen forward to load it up, push that back, and then it's going to play locally. That's it. These two aren't connected to each other, and they aren't connected to the head unit up in the front. It's just the same thing you could install yourself, but the Scion folks will do it for you, and they'll put their own little badge on it. A 2.4-liter inline-4 engine lives under the stubby hood, coupled to a 5-speed manual or an optional and rather antique 4-speed automatic. We had the auto, and it drove me nuts, hunting between top and third gear all the time. That's $950 I will keep in my pocket. That said, there is a manual shifting gate on the slush box to more sanely send your 158 horsepower and 162 foot-pounds of torque to the front wheels. MPG is 2226 with either gearbox. Let's price our XB, about $17,000 base, add $1,000 for an automatic transmission. $450 for the Alpine Sound, $1,200 for Alpine with navigation. Told you it was cheap. Back seat, headrest, the dual DVDs, $1,600 more. You just can't spend a lot on this guy.